This is a bit experimental because we haven't done this in the past. I have used Skype in meetings, but we're also going to try a PowerPoint thing later on as well, which we tried out before a little earlier, and hopefully that will be successful. Anyway, welcome everyone.
Yeah.
Particular welcome to our speaker, Nonja Peters, which you may be able to see on your screen there.
Van Emmerich.
Lady with the hairband there.
Yeah, just a bit better, but still looking like, you know.
Well, I like to start a little bit myself, and then we'll hand over to Nonja, because I've been busy working on our archives, you see. And I like to tell a little bit about it. Our archives are actually recorded as well now on our website, and you can find it on our website, erasmus.org.au, and then look at history.
Yes, you can.
So with that, I'll do my little bit. So as you know, probably we started Erasmus in 1965, a long time ago now. And I think our founders came up with a very inspiring name. It really served us well. As soon as you ask a speaker, we're from the Erasmus Foundation, they say, oh, it must be a good club, you see. My record in inviting a speaker once was she replied in half an hour, and it was a very promising speaker too. It was Meyer, the one that looks after older sickness and so on, and she's very much in demand, but she applied in half an hour. So here you are, all because of her name, I think. Anyway, the foundation was established by a group of people that called themselves the Borrow Club, and in fact, some of those are here tonight still. And it was established by the first consul general that we had after the war, a guy called Max Lindner, in 1953. And since then, the consul general and the consul were always part of the Borrow Club. And I think that may explain why we always had a very good cooperation from the consulate here in Melbourne. But of course, that disappeared totally when they closed the consulate in 1999. But before that, we almost met, well, firstly we met weekly and later on every fortnight. So we had a direct channel to the consulate that way. Now the history of Erasmus, you could divide in sort of three eras, you know, like there's two very prominent presidents been, and then the last era is really that we had several ones. In fact, now David Runja, which is here tonight, was one of them, and I'm one of them too. The first era was actually with Jonas Grayfelt. His son Flip Grayfelt is still alive, but Jonas is no longer with us. And he was from 1973 to 1990. And with him, a start was really made with reaching out to the wider community. And that's really what I want to talk about tonight. But that also fits in with our topic of having books. Firstly, the Jacob Smith Prize was established in 1974 for the annual best essay in Dutch. It lasted quite a few years, but of course, after the Melbourne Uni closed their Dutch teaching, we couldn't really continue anymore. So, but it's been going on for maybe 15 years or something like that. And then when Willem van Otterlo suddenly died in 1978, he was the chief conductor of the Sydney Symphony Orchestra, and prior to that of the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. We were approached by the Victorian College of the Arts to establish the Willem van Otterlo Memorial Fund for an outstanding music student. Now, Jonas managed to raise about $30,000 at the time, and since then another 10 or 15 was actually raised as well, and it's still going strong. And we hope to entice some of you, at least all of you, hopefully, to donate some money to the fund, because at the moment it's only running every 3 years, and we hope to bring that back to at least 2 years with some additional funds. So if you can find some money, that'd be good, and you can do that through our website on donations. Anyway, after Jonas, we had the era of Jan Strakke. He was particularly proficient, I have to say. He reigned for only 7 years, from 1990 to 1997. But in that time, he, apart from using the organizing usual speaker nights, he organized two arts exhibitions, two exhibitions to do with migrant experiences, and also do with, he also produced two books as well, or was involved with the production of two books. And I'll talk about the last two a little later. Now, the two art exhibitions were firstly the Second Landing, and that was in the National Gallery of Victoria in 1993. At the time, we had some very good links with the National Gallery, so that was maybe being part of it. And the second one was the Rembrandt. I think we joined another one there. Yeah. Second one was the Remnant Connection, held in the Malthouse in 1997. Unfortunately, Jan was not able to complete the last one, as he untimely died in March 1997. His daughter Will and his successor in the Erasmus, Thea Minoto, managed to finalize everything. So we actually had the exhibition. That was quite a success. Now, the first migrant exhibition was with Temperdule in the Dutch consulate, and later also in the Immigration Museum. I'm not sure whether you've seen that, Nonja, but...
I think I saw one of them, yeah. The other Dutch I saw.
Yeah, okay.
Also, yeah.
The second one was our Vonagelli Exhibition, and that was multi-stage. It started in the Treasury building here in Melbourne, and was opened by Sir Marvi Pavo. It was actually a friend, I think, of Jan. That's why we got him, because it was quite a coup that he had him, actually. And thereafter, we had the Vonagelli 1997 50th Anniversary Festival, and the exhibition was part of that. And again, that was quite good. Incidentally, the 75th anniversary of Vonagelli was just finished last month. So, and they're still doing it. So now to the books. Jan was involved with, firstly, the Vonagelli exhibition was a book published by Dirk and Marijke IJsbergen. And they also did the exhibition, in fact. They wrote a very popular book called Where Waters Meet.
Can't hear you anymore, Jan.
Yeah, okay. I'm getting a sort of gurgling noise at the moment, but I think we're right now, yeah. Now, I'm sure that some of you would have read that book, because it's in 3 editions, in fact. It was quite heavily printed. That brings me also to the topic of tonight. Jan had big plans to publish a book which he called The Move Down Under. According to a Dutch Career article of July 96, 8 academic authors were to contribute chapters in the book from the early history onwards here in Australia, and up to $10,000 was pledged to finance the book. Now, our speaker tonight was one of the mentioned authors, Nonja, but due to Jan's untimely death, progress on the book was completely halted. However, Nonja eventually managed to publish the book, and that's the topic for tonight, in 2006. And the title, The Dutch Down Under, 1606 to 2006. So that's really my very short history of the outer part of Erasmus. And now I'd like to introduce Nonja. She curated the first exhibition on post-war migration in Western Australia in Northern, which was just like Vonagelli for non-English-speaking migrants who were accommodated on arrival there. She's an associate professor of Curtin University and an expert in the field of migrant history and experiences. And she published a number of books on that topic. And she did present this once before, in fact, in 2015. Can you remember that, Nonja?
Yeah, I can. I still have that PowerPoint.
Oh, no, isn't it? She was in the Netherlands, I believe, for 4 to 5 years, and only recently returned in Perth. Is that correct, Nonja?
5 years.
5 years, here you are. Well, anyway, thank you. And with that, I hand over to Nonja. Welcome back, Nonja.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you. I suppose the first thing I'll start to say is that my research began on the Dutch probably a little bit in the 1980s. I didn't do upper high school till I was married, and so I didn't enter the university system till about 2000. But before that, I was already doing my research, and then I did my first exhibition. I got my PhD on migrants in business in 1999, and the Dutch are one of the groups that I studied. And then at that time, I was also, a little while later, I went for something called a Curtin Research Fellowship. Up until then, I was doing the migrant experience across the board. But from 2004, when I got this Curtin Research Fellowship, I really focused just on the Dutch. And with that, I'll just briefly read out that in the years that I worked on that with a colleague, we taped 470 interviews with Dutch around Australia, 20 taped focus group sessions, 520 completed questionnaires, 300 family histories, and then unfortunately we were looking for money to do things on the Netherlands East Indies. We had 1,000 expressions of interest, but we needed money from Het Gebar and they didn't give it to us, unfortunately. But in the meantime, of course, we're coming up with this for the period that it's the 400 years, the very first 400 years with the Doofken. And Hans Sundal said to me, we need a book really. And the book that Jan Strakke had reached a pregnant pause, if you like, for want of a better word. And I was one of the original authors in that. So I went to the authors and they said they would be interested. But because I want to take the material I collect and sure, write an academic article, but then also turn it into something much like you've talked about the exhibitions and things like that. I want to give it back to the people in a format that they can consume. So exhibitions, festivals, all sorts of things like that, books, of course. So we then went and looked at the book and kept to the authors. I think only one said they didn't want to go with that at all. And then I went to many more authors to fill in the gaps, like the Netherlands East Indies story and a lot of the gaps on the military story, as much as we could fill in at a very short notice, because we didn't have much time to do this in. And if it hadn't been for Jan Strakke, of course, but also for Hans Sundal. Hans Sundal did a deal with the Wolters Kluwer. Wolters Kluwer then decided they would pay for it. And I went and also interspersed the academic chapters with personal stories from people, so that you'd get a story about a personal experience of migration and not just the academic perspective on it. And artists I went to as well. But this also meant I had to go and source a lot of photographs. So that took a lot of time to get photographs from everywhere, to fit every chapter, to make them more interesting for everyone and to make it more engaging. And I mean, Wolters Kluwer, they really did an amazing job in from my perspective. I mean, it's here. They didn't spare any costs on it at all. Not a cost. Everything was top quality. And so it went out, I think, just in time, 2006, it was over East. The Rabobank also paid some money towards. Do you want to put that website, that PowerPoint up, Jan?
Yeah, okay.
Then we can sort of see some of that. Well, it took a lot of intense work to get it to be ready for a much more public book. It was going to be very much an academic book to start off with. Now this was going into a much more public, and here it is.
Okay, yeah.
And as I say, Hans Sundal, he had already made sure the money was there. The Rabobank eventually bought 125 books for their conference to give all their different people. The people that went to the Ridderzaal, that you can see there, to the night where it was launched by our foreign minister, Alexander Downer, you'll see him on one of those photographs next to the king. King now, then the Crown Prince, of course. He launched it that particular night, and it was a copy was given to everyone, 300 guests at that evening as well. And there you can see me with the Rabobank manager as well with a book in tow.
Okay.
Eventually, though, I had a problem because, of course, Wolters Kluwer, they do things like tax books and accountancy books, really boring stuff, in my opinion. And so I then did a deal with the University of West Australia Press, who had published my very first book, Milk and Honey But No Gold. And they decided to take it on board. So they did a deal with Wolters Kluwer. They then rebranded it with another cover which had their brand on it. And as a result of that, it went round the world. It's in the Congress Library, it's everywhere. It's in the British Library, it's of course in Trove. They did a wonderful job on actually getting it out there. So that sort of explains the book, and you can ask questions later. Then if we can have the next slide. At the same time that I'm working on that, I started to also work with the Hogarth Institute, with Marijke van Vazen, on a project that the lower houses of Parliament and the National Archives were putting together, which was then an exhibition. But I want to just sidestep from that for a minute, because Marijke had many years before come to Australia to look to see what the National Archives of Australia held in terms of Dutch records. And she didn't find these there. She found in the Consul General's attic, she found 51,525,000 registration cards for immigrants in the Netherlands coming to Australia. Now, ordinarily they would have been destroyed, and they were covering the emigration of 135,000 Dutch who came to Australia between 1946 and 1982, and they have all sorts of information about the children, the dates of birth, all the religion, marital status, and then they also have some very personal details sometimes. So those cards eventually went back to the Netherlands. And if we'll go to the next slide, please.
That would include you.
Thank you. So we were advising on the exhibition that the lower houses were putting together with the National Archives, Inpakken and Wegwezen.
Yeah.
And there you can see the results of that exhibition. And that's the invite. And it shows you that on that night, the Speaker of the House, Frans Weinglass, who was at that time, and myself, we launched that exhibition, but also all those cards were launched as going into the National Archives. Those cards are now available for you. If you go onto the website of the National Archives of the Netherlands, you can access those cards. Now, they cover about 87% of emigration to Australia from the Netherlands. Not everyone, you won't find everyone, but you may very well be lucky and find your family on that. So there you go. So I thought that was it was such an amazing initiative. And Marijke and I have been working ever since on trying to get as much of our documentation in both archives digitized so that you can actually access it online. And because it's a very rich source for telling family histories and just knowing about the past, because many of us were children when we were migrated at that time. The exhibition you can see a lot of photographs there. There would be a lot of the photographs that were some in the book from the Dutch Down Under, many more from people around Australia that I sourced to give to them, and we had to do all these permission forms and all the rest of it. And so they went into that, and that was launched that day, and it stayed up for about 6 months, I think, in the lower house of Parliament in the Netherlands.
Wow.
So if you go to the next slide. So at the time I was working out that really there are 4 themes that you can hang our story on of the Dutch connection with Australia, and that's maritime, military, migrant, and mercantile. And after that, you can have lots of sub-themes. And you'll see the picture in the middle really is the exhibition I did in 2016 for the 400 Years Hartog, which went into the State Library in West Australia, and it covered the 4 themes. And that year also, the King and Queen came to West Australia, and I produced another book very much, there it is, The Dutch Down Under. And that has, I mean, the Dutch Down Under had about 23 authors. This one had 27 authors and covers all those themes, some of them that weren't covered in the first book. And I'm hoping to get that online eventually, but I'm coming across to the Dutch Festival, Holland Festival in March, and I will bring some of those books at that time. But it's such an amazingly rich history. It's fantastic. It really is. So if you'd like to go to the next slide. Look, these are some of the businesses that I interviewed around Australia, mostly in West Australia to start off with, because my PhD was the Dutch in business in West Australia, also the Italians, the Greeks, and the Vietnamese. And I did around 150 interviews of the Dutch just for that, and 200, nearly 300 interviews all told for the PhD. A nightmare to try and analyse. So there you have, for instance, Toots Gootjeswinkel. Underneath it, you have someone growing bulbs and all sorts of plants, Florico. And by then you had business migrants, and he came in as a business migrant. You get our fish and chip shop in the middle there, the 2J Cafe, and then another cafe. Underneath that, there's an Albany group, and they're having a big grocery store, but also getting a lot of local produce. On the left-hand side, you've got a butcher from Tasmania. Then from Collie, remember the ice chests? Do any of you remember the ice chests?
Yeah.
You can't tell.
You know, where before fridges we had this big block of ice. Well, he was delivering the ice at that time. And above that, you've got, hang on a minute, I've got to have a look. Above that, you've got also the bakery in Tasmania. But I mean, I interviewed right around Australia. And I did first and generation entrepreneurs as well. And I will be publishing that next year. It's an old PhD, but it's still worth the publishing just for the stories that are in it. Mm-hmm. So the next one. These are some of the books I've written along the way. And I've been working now, not just in Australia, but also in the region. So in Indonesia, but we worked in all the Indian Ocean region where we had, where the Dutch have impacted on the lives of Indigenous groups. And that's the Verelander book, which is second from the right, Verelander. And there we went to South Africa, Namibia, Indonesia, west coast of West Australia, where you have Aboriginals who claim they have Dutch heritage through the shipwrecks, and also a tiny island off the coast of Timor, Kiza. We travelled around the Banda Sea for that, and I will give Jan a little video to where you can see I don't know who that is, not me.
Not me either.
I can replicate that noise. The one that I've recently done is that I've done a lot of exhibitions recently in the Netherlands on the story of Depok. Mm-hmm. So there's two. The Dream from Cornelis Chastelain, that's in Dutch. I didn't write it in Dutch, I wrote it in English, and it was translated. The one on the right, From Tyranny to Freedom, is about all the Dutch East India, the Netherlands East Indies children who were brought out of Japanese prisoner of war camps into Australia for rehabilitation, and then sent back to the Netherlands, or some went back to the Netherlands East Indies and eventually the Netherlands. But it covers the whole period of the Japanese invasion, but also the Bersia period. As does the book on the left, which is about the Depokers. It's now a slavery story and starts 400 years ago, but it goes across 4 centuries. So that would also be something that perhaps would interest some people who've lived in Indonesia, certainly. And the next one, Jan?
Yeah.
Okay, look, like Jan has said, exhibitions are really things that get it out there. And you connect with the people again. You tell the story in many different ways through exhibitions. And the second one down where you see an umbrella, a blue one, I curated the welcome walls in West Australia. And that's the last phase of the welcome walls. And this is how important it is for people to see they are part of the national narrative and part of the whole story of migrants in Australia and the Dutch in Australia. At 10 o'clock in the morning, on the 10th of November 2010, 40 degrees, 8,000 people are in front of that.
Wow.
And I wrote a book called We Came from Sea. We came from sea. No, we didn't. What was it again? And anyway, we came by sea, I beg your pardon. And it sold an incredible amount of books in the first week, because what we did sensibly is put everyone's name in the back that was on the welcome wall. So it was a great inducement to buy the book. But these are different exhibitions. I've done about 25 exhibitions, mainly on the Dutch, here and in the Netherlands, because that's what people want to see. They want to go along and say, that was me, or I experienced something like that, or I know that story, I know that person. And it makes it brings it down to people. And it's, in the end, I think all us research should be about people. Next slide. I also work with artists. So you see at the back of these, this is the work in Broome that went up last year. And he took some oral history segments from this book to explain the experience of the victims of the Dorniers. And those are some of the victims. So this is a piece of public art. Another piece of public art, you'll see at the bottom there, we did that for the Vlaming, also for the 2006, because the Vlaming named the Swan River, and that is on the Swan River, that one, and it's times with it connects with Amsterdam time. That particular one, it's done by sculptors that are well known, and I've done a lot of that, and perhaps you have too. And I think it would be nice if we certainly somewhere put all those sculptures, and so people can look up the sort of things that we're putting together as academics that are also public academics. Well, the next one. So getting back to digitising, which is what we're trying to do all the time, you'll see that we had a number of workshops, and the one on the left is from Nias Lorenz in Leiden. We've had international workshops with people right around the world coming to actually see and hear what we're doing with all our documentation. So that's it there. And these are the people working on it together with, I do this with the Edith Cowan University because they're heavily into digitising as well. And as a result of that, we recently did an exhibition last year, well, this year actually. It opened on the 8th of June in the residence of the Australian ambassador in The Hague, called Moving People, Australia and the Netherlands. And I picked 12 people, 6 in Australia, 6 in the Netherlands, and tell their story. Now that's, if you go to the next slide, or the last slide, these are 2 of the banners. And the banners tell that story, as I say, plus introductory banners, because it went up for the 80 years diplomatic relationships in the Netherlands. And it did here in Perth as well at the museum. So there are boards at the West Australian Museum at the moment. It's coming to the Holland Festival next year. And in the middle, I've just shown how the cards, on the right in that middle section, you'll see that there's the cards that I said that are digitised that you can access now at the National Archives, and the immigration cards in the National Archives in the Netherlands there. And I did show them at the Erasmus the last time I was there. But the 2 boards, they're actually very big. They're 200 centimetres tall and 85 centimetres wide. And they just tell the story of different people or a couple, and how even 2 Australians who have chosen the Netherlands to live in, how they have found settling there. And it's a really interesting fact that they experience a lot of what the Dutch do in Australia when they settle. It hasn't been easy for them either. So I'd say, if that's okay, I'll leave it at that. Yeah. And you can ask me some questions.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll start with the questions. Always good to give the start. You mentioned that you had 23 authors now in the book that Jan started, whereas originally it was only going to be 8. Well, only, I thought it was already quite a few 8. But,
well, yeah, there was the 8 are in, 7 of the 8 are in there.
Yeah. Okay.
But it now is becoming a commemorative volume. So it had to look pretty cool. You know, it had to look engaging. It had to be something that they wanted to hand out at special events and things like that. So it took on a different hue, but it didn't lose its academic, base. Everything in it has been done academically and has been peer reviewed by people and things like that, and by editors and all the rest. And the book is dedicated to Jan Strak.
Yeah. Oh, very good. Well.
And it talks in my section, when I introduce it, I talk about the people who started the whole project, who worked on it. Everyone was well acknowledged,
Yeah. Okay. Who can I ask another question. Anyone?
Yeah, now, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, now, thanks, Nonja, that's great. Now, you've got so much information and material there. Frankly, you know, I haven't seen a lot of it before, and I wonder, Jan, whether we can do something about disseminating or making that a bit more available to the Melbourne audience. You know, because it's just good stuff. It's great stuff you've got there.
Yeah, that would be really good. And I was thinking, I hate doing that, but I've even gone to the DACC because I think some of this should get across Australia, and it should connect with other researchers doing things, because we really don't have a picture of who's doing what, you know?
Well, that's right, because I mean, frankly, this stuff, it's a little bit hidden, really. It's hidden in sort of academic circles, and it's really good. Now, I'm very keen about that website you mentioned in Holland. Now, can we just find that by looking up the National Archives, do you think?
Yes, you can. And what you'll find too, when I bring the exhibition to the Holland Festival, every one of the 14 banners has a QR code that will take you to more information about that person. We really want to showcase the digitising process and how much information you can get from it, you know. And one of the boards is on Johnny Young, for instance, you know.
Perhaps I can work with you, you know, on our website. I can have another section maybe. Someone is stirring his coffee.
Sorry, there's a lot of background noise all of a sudden. I didn't get that.
Having a bit of a check in the back.
You're not coming through, Jan.
Oh, okay. I think hang on. I'll put the sharing off. It can help. Yeah, just a moment.
Okay.
Stop sharing. Is that better?
Yeah, that could be better.
Hi, everyone.
Is that better? Oh, a bit of an echo.
I'm trying to get comfortable on one of these office chairs. I'm sitting sideways.
I just want to say, maybe I can work together with you, that we put something on our website to try to put that together with references and so on, yeah?
Yeah, I think you should put a section on there about Dutch immigration. Huh?
Presentation again in when I'm in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that might, and it's more engaged. And I don't mind if people stop me when I'm talking, you know, when something comes to mind, because I'm telling you stuff that I sort of know backwards. And
I think probably
getting there, is it distorted?
I think what happened is someone is probably locked in twice. I can't see it though. Oh, this is
It's echoing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nonja, did you say that you're coming to the Dutch festival in March? Or?
Yeah, March for the March. Well, I'll come across for a week, you know.
Is that in Melbourne or?
Yeah.
Maybe we could put the exhibition up somewhere else as well, you know, instead of just the one festival.
What day is the Kermis? Let's say today in Melbourne in March.
I think it's the 18th, if I remember, the Holland Festival.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you know about that, Jan? Where is this?
Yeah.
That's in Berwick.
I do, yeah.
Is this the one in Berwick, is it?
Also, I need to get the whole thing. It's in digital format, and I need to get it printed in Melbourne.
Yeah.
It goes on to pop-up banners, you know, so it can be shifted easily.
Are you going to also say something a little bit about Vonagelli? Because I've got a brother-in-law here. He was only 2 years old, so he's very interested because he went to Vonagelli. Are you going to say something about Vonagelli?
Vonagelli. I met Aisbert in the Netherlands. I had dinner with her one night, but I always gave her stuff from the northern migrant camps. We did the first study on that in 1980. And then, and she's actually got a story also in this book.
A touch of Dutch.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I have done heritage study on all of my camps in West Australia. So there are a lot more stories on that, and heritage study that you leave a legacy about it. You know, no longer something that died, because you're saying, look, we've got all this hidden history. Everyone's doing little bits of it. We need to put it together, really seriously.
We also got a lot of books of Bendigo, because we've been in a Dutch club from 1983 till 2017. We're still a social group, and we're actually celebrating St. Nicholas on Friday.
Right. And are you going to be taking some of that stuff to the State Library?
Well, I wonder where it has to go, because if I die, I'd like it to go somewhere. You know, would the State Library in Melbourne be the best place?
Right. I'm not getting all of it, but
there are lots of books of history, of photos, and all the occasions we have celebrated. Because we also had Dutch dances in Bendigo.
Well, that's right. So a lot of the minutes of the meeting and things like that can go into state libraries. What I'm going to do is, every time I go to the Eastern States now, is go to the state libraries and ask if I can put any interviews I've done from that state on the Dutch into their collections.
Okay. Yeah.
The West Australian State Library has taken my migrant collection on board for West Australia.
Yeah. Okay.
So they're digitising all that. It'll become a special collection.
So
we need to make sure we have that everywhere, you know? Yeah. We need to make sure that it's linked. And the Hogan's Institute would be very keen on linking all that.
So are you going to instigate it, that it can happen at the State Library?
Yeah, I'm already working on it. Yes, I will. I really will. Yes.
Then I know where the stuff can go to.
Yeah, I'm going to start talking to state libraries, but I want to do that in person, you know, not just in a Skype, because it's never quite the same. But our exhibition, the one I'm going to show is going to go into the Nationaal Archief in The Hague in April, but it'll be a Dutch version of it then.
Okay, where is that in The Hague? Because I might be
in the Nationaal Archief.
National Archief. Where is that exactly?
Near the station, right behind the station, Centraal.
Centraal.
Den Haag Centraal, right behind is the National Archief, and the Koninklijke Bibliotheek is there.
Okay.
All right.
So I've been working with them for years. We've been having all these things to get the experts to try and work how we can get it online, not just online, but where it has longevity. You don't want this stuff on websites that you can't. Who knows what's going to happen when you die, you know? So it's all about eventually having like a state library where it's going to stay. So we have to keep that in mind, that it has to have longevity. And how are we going to do that? It's by working with other institutions that have that longevity. The National Library of Australia, I was on that board for 6 years. You know, there is where I would do it. Pandora also takes cuts of people's websites, but it's not what you eventually want completely, but it's better than nothing, you know, that sort of thing.
All right. Any other questions? No? All silent?
Next time I'll do a song and a dance and make it more exciting.
One thing we could mention, Nonja, as far as websites, there is also another website called the Dag, and that is just like the Dutch Dag, it's written with 3 A's in the middle.
Yeah, Dutch Australians at a glance, it means.
Yeah.
Dag, you know.
And there's a lot of
Dutch Australians at a glance, and it has got stories in it already. Yeah. I have put stories on it.
The best thing is all those things, if you can send it over the email, and then
I'll send it through. Well, you've got the URLs of that, haven't you?
Yeah, it's on our Erasmus website as well, though.
That's I still will be putting a lot of stuff. What I'll eventually be doing is trying to put a lot of photographs on it that I've collected that I don't always have captions for or ownership, and I need that.
Yeah.
But it's a long-term process, and we all need to work together on it, really.
I've got a whole stack of books, all all in order, you know, from all the years of what we've done in Bendigo.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the thing we need to talk about. You know, how are we going to do this? Where are we going to have it so that it's a legacy? Not all our grandkids will be interested, but there will be some. And maybe right down the track there will. And it's for them that we're leaving our stories.
Okay, I will also on Monday I'll be at the heritage meeting. I will discuss it again with them as well, because that's why I'm part of that. So that some of the Dutch stuff also used in Bendigo. And one day we hope to have a museum that all can go to. So, you know, I'm working on that as well. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. And we're really, it's time now, because it's amazing that we're all working on this, because the second generation were really not made welcome into Dutch clubs. Because of aanpassen.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, we were all taught, my parents just said, no, gaan nou naar buiten en aanpassen. Not that we had a clue, but we then thought we have to be Australian. Yeah. So I always write and there's some lovely stories about that, of course, how kids are trying to work with that. I mean, my parents were saying, well, you can eat Vegemite, and we wanted to eat Vegemite. My mother said they don't have to eat Vegemite. My father said they should. And we said, well, we want a big lump of toast, thick, and Vegemite, because there was no sliced bread yet. Then we could run outside and look like the Australian kids, you know, even if we didn't like it.
Well, if there's no more questions, is that correct? No more questions? Yeah. I'd like to really thank Nonja for your excellent talk, and it was quite interesting. I'm sure that the others, quite a few, enjoyed it as well. So we'll just do a few hand claps. I'm not sure when that comes out, but
thank you very much too.
Yeah.
Well done. Well done, Nonja. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you write down?
See you in March.
Yeah. Okay.
I hope to get there. Can you write down the talk of Vonagelli? I've got a couple. I think I've got a couple.
Yeah, I'd like one. Yeah.
If you can write it down, and then
show me one.
You can get to it. Okay.
All right. Well, I'll close the session then. And again, thanks very much, Nonja. Bye-bye.
Bye,
everyone.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.